In this video, we will talk about the doctrine of basic structure, and this doctrine is an evolution of the judiciary and it's an important element in judicial review. So, what is meant by this basic structure or basic feature of the Constitution? It's basically three terms: secularism, democracy, and federalism. These three are the basic structure or basic features of our Constitution. But in 1975, through a landmark decision, that was the case in Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan, the Supreme Court included one more term, that was Doctrine of Judicial Review, as a basic structure of the Constitution. So, why this doctrine of basic structure is important? This doctrine is very much important because it helps the court to invalidate any constitutional amendment if that amendment destroys or harms the basic structure of the Constitution. And have you ever thought about what could be the reason for formulating this doctrine of basic structure? Well, there was a time this executive and legislature, the other two organs of the government, crossed their boundary defined by the Constitution. This resulted in the formulation of this doctrine of basic structure. Now, which all are the important landmark cases which resulted in the evolution of this doctrine? There are mainly 7 landmark cases, and I listed it out. The very first one is Shankari Prasad case, then comes Golaknath case, then Keshavananda Bharati case. The fourth one is Indira Nehru Gandhi versus Raj Narayan case. Then comes Minerva Mills case. Then Indira Sangve versus Union of India. And the last one was S.R. Bommai case. These 7 cases resulted in the evolution of the doctrine of basic structure. Now we will discuss the very first case, that was Shankari Prasad case. This case happened in 1951, and this was the very first case which challenged the very first constitutional amendment. Actually, that was in 1951. And in this case, the Supreme Court held that Article 368 of the Constitution empowers the Parliament to amend the Constitution. And this Article 368 also included the power to amend the fundamental rights guaranteed under Part 3. So, the Parliament, as per Article 368, is empowered to amend the Constitution, and this power includes to amend the fundamental rights too. That was the decision taken by the Supreme Court in Shankari Prasad case. So, now it is Golaknath case. The interesting thing happened in this case was that our Supreme Court completely reversed its stand it took in the Shankari Prasad case. What it held in Shankari Prasad case? Yes, it held as per Article 368, the Parliament is empowered to amend the Constitution, and this power includes even to amend the fundamental rights. But in the present case, it clearly declared that the Parliament cannot amend fundamental rights. And it suggested that a new Constitutional Assembly can only amend the fundamental rights. And according to the Supreme Court, Article 368 talks only about the procedures to follow while amending the Constitution. And it does not confer any power on the Parliament to amend the Constitution. And what was the end result? Yes, after this judgment, the citizen had a strong feeling that the fundamental rights guaranteed to them under Part 3 of the Constitution is permanent. Now comes the Keshavananda Bharati case. It's really an important case, Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala, and the judgment passed in 1973. And in this case, the petitioner challenged the Kerala Land Reforms Act 1970, and Supreme Court constituted a 13-judge bench, a large bench itself, to hear the case. And the decision was passed in a very slight majority, that is 6:7 ratio. And the 7 judges had a view that, like any other act or statute, the Indian Constitution is also amendable to fulfill the socio-economic obligations the state has towards the citizens. But there was a condition. The Supreme Court clearly held the Parliament can amend the Constitution, but it cannot amend the basic structure of the Constitution. That means the basic structure should remain the same even the Parliament can amend the Constitution. Now we will discuss the other landmark judgment, that is in Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan. The case happened in 1975, and the highlight of this case is that it resulted in declaring emergency in India. That emergency was in between 1975 till 1977. And this was the case which directly questioned the power of the judiciary. And there was an attempt by the parliament to establish its supremacy over the judiciary. And moreover, in this case, various aspects were put into debate, like basic structure of the constitution, the jurisdictions of the court, and the separation of powers between 3 organs, like legislature, executive, and judiciary, and then the right to free and fair election, then the important doctrine, that doctrine of judicial review, and even the concept, the rule of law, was also questioned. And it was during this case the emergency was declared in the country. So what happened, or what was the result? Fundamental rights got suspended, media got censored, and hence there was no any possible way to bring the updates of the case to the general public. The case challenged the 39th Amendment of the Constitution. What was the 39th Amendment? Through the 39th Amendment, Parliament passed a law that the courts could not entertain the cases related with the election of President, Vice President, Prime Minister, and the Speaker. But our Supreme Court, through this case, once again upheld the supremacy of the Constitution and held Constitution is supreme, and always judiciary will be there to safeguard it and to protect the fundamental rights guaranteed to its citizens. And finally, the Supreme Court invalidated the 39th Amendment, declaring it as null and void because it tried to violate the basic structure of the Constitution. Thus, the court once again established the fact that in a democracy, Parliament is not supreme. Judiciary will always be there to uphold the Constitution from the harmful intervention of the Parliament. Now we will move to the next case, that is Minerva Mills case. This case also upheld the doctrine of basic structure. Let's see how it is or how it was. In this case, the 42nd Amendment Act was challenged, and what was this 42nd Amendment? Through this 42nd Amendment, the Parliament declared that all directive principles of state policy would be supreme than the fundamental rights guaranteed by Article 14 and 19. And one more change made through this 42nd Amendment, that was Article 38. That is Article. What is Article 368? Article 368 empowers the power to amend the Constitution. That Article 368 is outside the scope of judiciary. That was the second change or second law made through the 42nd Amendment. So what does it mean? Yes, the court will have no more power to decide the matters related with the constitutional amendment. So the main intention of the Parliament behind this move was to nullify the judgment passed in Keshavananda Bharati case, so that they could enact any law without the fear of any legal scrutiny. And the court remarked that our constitution well defined the relation between the directive principles of state policy and fundamental rights. Means part 4 and part 3 respectively. And that the makers of our constitution had a clear view that the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy together constitute the social revolution. Thus, the court once again remarked directive principles have to be achieved without violating the fundamental rights of the citizens. And now comes Indira Sanghvi's case, and this case is also known as Mandal Commission case. And what is this Mandal Commission? Let's see. In 1979, the Government of India appointed a commission to fix the criteria for reserving jobs in public sector for socially and economically backward class. And this commission was headed by B.P. Mandal. He was a great politician. So the commission named as Mandal Commission. And what was the proposal of this commission? The commission proposed 27% of reservation for other backward classes and an additional 10% of reservation for socially and economically backward classes. And in this case, the petitioner challenged the commission report, and the contention of the petitioners were that the reservation based solely on caste base, that is against the principle of equality and non-discrimination. So their prayer was the reservation should be considered the economic criteria rather than the caste base. But the court held backwardness should decide on the basis of social and educational factors and not just economic factor. And in the judgment, the court clearly stated that the creamy layer should be accepted from or excluded from the reservation, and at the same time the total reservation should not exceed 50%. And it was through this landmark case the court brought the rule of law as one of the basic structure of the constitution. And now comes the last case, that is SR Bombay case. In this case, no any constitutional amendment was challenged. The matter of dispute was Article 356 of our Constitution. Now, what is Article 356? Article 356 talks about the imposition of presidential rule in a state. When the President realized the fact that the state is not in a position to function in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. That time, the President can impose emergency in a state. So, this is about what Article 356 says about. And in this case, how Article 356 is applicable? First, I will brief its facts, then it will come more clear to you. S.R. Bommai was the Chief Minister of Karnataka between 88 and 89, and his government got dismissed on 1989 as per Article 356, and presidential rule imposed there in Karnataka. The presidential rule imposed alleging that Bombay government lost its majority in the state legislature. And at the same time, the governor refused to give an opportunity to the Bombay government to test its majority in the assembly. Against this arbitrary action of the governor, the S.R. Bommai approached the Supreme Court. And while discussing this case, the Supreme Court mainly considered two important aspects. They are Doctrine of Basic Structure and misuse of Article 356. Now you will be thinking how basic structure will come under this dispute. Yes, the federalism and democracy. These are the two aspects which are considered as the basic structure of our Constitution. Since these two are in question, the court applied the doctrine of basic structure and held, as per Article 356, President has no absolute power to dismiss a state legislature. And both the center and the state governments, both are same to each other, and the state governments are not subordinate to the center. The court also remarked that it is the floor of the state assembly that will decide the state government's majority and not the subjective opinion of the governor. Thus, we can conclude that after the decisions in Keshavananda Bharati case, Indira Gandhi election case, and Minerva Mills case, it was declared that the Parliament can amend the Constitution, but not to the basic structure of the Constitution. And at the same time, through all these judgments, the Supreme Court declared that it will always uphold sovereign, democracy, and secular nature of the law, and independence of judiciary and the fundamental rights of the citizens. The Supreme Court will always stand as a guardian to all these aspects of the Constitution. And it's also, we can say that all the legislation or whatever it may be, is it any amendment or the act or whatever, all will be subjected to judicial review. And if it violates the fundamental framework of the Constitution, then the judiciary will declare it as null and void. Because the Supreme Court is the authority to scrutinize and interpret all the constitutional amendments passed by the Parliament.